My young friends, many great people have come and gone, great for one reason or another. They say Aristotle was great. Why? Because he was a thinker. Napoleon was great. Why? Because he was a great administrator. He was a great conqueror. They say Einstein was great. Why? Because he was an inventor. They say Peter and Frederick were great. Why? Because they evolved order out of chaos and they made their respective nations great. They say Solomon and Justinian was great. One of them was the wisest and the most magnificent potentate that ever lived, and the other was a great lawgiver. They say Anushirwan was great because of his justice and generosity, and the list continues. Today, my young friends, my young Muslim brothers have acquainted themselves and familiarized themselves with personalities like this, and the modern day personalities, the Beckhams, the Ronaldos, the Ronaldinhos, who they were, what they achieved, what was their contribution to society. Yet how sad it is that the same Muslim brothers who declare La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, when it comes to great Islamic personalities, when it comes to the Anbiya alayhimus salam, the prophets of Allah, when it comes to the Khulafaya Arba, when it comes to the Ashari Mubashara, when it comes to the Ashab Badr, we don't even have a leg to stand on. My young friends, such is our condition today, that we even remain ignorant to the basic personalities of Islam, to whom we are indebted to for our iman, to whom we are indebted to for the kalima La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Basic personalities like Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala an, the very man regarding which the poet said, Laysa min Allahi bimustankiri an yajma al-alam fi wahidi. The very man in who Allah made the whole world absorbing. The very man whose genius contributed more towards the formation and centralization of a nation than the combined effort of 1 million people. The very man who till this day is believed to be a miracle in himself, as he not only founded an empire, Umar gave it solidarity that this empire remain unshaken for over 13 to 1400 years. The very man who was Aristotle, the very man who was Caesar, the very man who was Napoleon, the very man who was Peter, the very man who was Frederick, all roll into one. Because Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, not only was he a thinker, at the same time as being a thinker, Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a great conqueror. At the same time as being a conqueror, Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu was an administrator. At the same time as being an administrator, Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a reformer. At the same time as being a reformer, he was a leader. At the same time as being a leader, he was a spiritual guide. This is the reason today the title allocated is none other than Umar Farooq, so that Muslim brothers who declare La ilaha illallah, we can familiarize ourselves with personalities like this. These people to whom we are indebted to for our kalima La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And I say to you, my young brothers and my young sisters, for those of us that are ignorant with regards to the status and maqam of Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala an, he is that companion of Rasulullah regarding whom which Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam himself, look at the blessed words of Rasulullah, لَوْ كَانَ بَعْدِي نَبِيٌّ لَكَانَ Umar. If there was a prophet to come after Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, though there can be no prophet. Why? Because the Quran says, مَا كَانَ مُحَمَّدٌ أَبَا أَحَدٍ مِّن رِجَالِكُمْ وَلَكِنْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ وَخَاتَمَ النَّبِيِّينَ. Muhammad is the last and final prophet. He is the seal of prophethood. There is no prophet to come after him right till the day of judgment. Here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam hypothetically is saying, if Allah was to choose anyone for prophethood after Muhammad, then this person that Allah would have chosen would have been none other than Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He is that companion of Rasulullah regarding whom Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself said, ما طلعت الشمس على رجل خير من عمر. The sun has never risen on a man better than Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiyallahu ta'ala an. He is that companion of Rasulullah regarding whom Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam himself has said, قَدْ كَانَ فِي الْأُمَمِ مُحَدَّثُونَ فَإِن يَكُنْ فِي أُمَّتِي فَعُمَرٍ. That in the nations before you, there were people inspired with guidance. If there is any man that is inspired with guidance in my ummah, then this man is none other than Umar Farooq radiyallahu ta'ala an. My friends, he is that companion of Rasulullah. Everyone else would declare the kalima La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and they would come to the gathering of Rasulullah, and Rasulullah would express happiness. He was one of the unique ones. For him, the blessed Prophet of Allah would raise his hand and beg the Almighty Allah, oh Allah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would make dua to Allah. Allahumma a'izz al-Islam bi Umar ibn Khattab or bi Abi Jahl ibn Hisham. Oh Allah, strengthen Islam with either Umar Farooq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu or Abu Jahl ibn Hisham. Oh Allah, whoever you love from amongst these two, whoever is more dear to you, oh Allah, I beg you, give him the tawfiq to say La ilaha illallah. And when he declares, my friends, La ilaha illallah, not only were the Sahaba rejoicing on the dunya, the angels in the heaven were rejoicing. So much so, Jibreel Amin descends from the heaven and he comes to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and says, Ya Muhammad, istabshara ahlus samai bi Islami Umar. Today, because Umar Farooq has said La ilaha illallah, the angels in the heavens are rejoicing and expressing happiness. He is that companion of Rasulullah regarding whom Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself said, O Muslimano, ittaqu ghadaba Umar, fa inna Allah yaghdab idha ghadaba Umar. Do not make Umar angry. Why? Because when Umar becomes angry, the Lord of the Arsh and Kursi also becomes angry. He is that companion of Rasulullah. When Amr ibn al-As was the governor of Egypt and the river Nile of the Egyptians stopped flowing. Why? Because the Egyptians believed that the only reason the river Nile flows is because they would sacrifice a virgin. They would adorn her, put gold and silver on her, beautiful clothes, and then they would take this virgin and they would throw her inside the river Nile. And they believed this is the reason the river Nile flows. When Amr ibn al-As was the governor of Egypt, he told them, this is something that Islam does not allow you to do. You cannot take an innocent life. It so happened that year, perchance, that the river Nile stopped flowing. Amr ibn al-As radiyallahu ta'ala anhu is now worried. He doesn't know what to do. He takes a pen and he writes a letter to the Amir al-Mu'mineen in Madinatul Munawwara explaining his situation. When Umar Farooq receives this letter, my friend, he picks up the pen and he responds to this letter. This is the first letter that is being addressed to a river. He is writing to the river Nile, and this is what he says to the river Nile. Min Abdillahi Umar, Amir al-Mu'mineen, ila nili ahli Misr, amma ba'd, fa in kunta tajri min qibalik, fala tajri, wa in kana al-wahid al-qahhar yujriyak, fanas'al Allahu al-wahid al-qahhar an yujriyak. This is what he says to the river Nile. From the servant of Allah, Umar, commander of the faithful, to the river Nile of the Egyptians. O river Nile, if you flow on your own accord and will, then Umar has nothing to say to you. But if you flow with the will and command of Allah, then I ask the Lord of the Arsh and Kursi to make you flow. This letter is taken from Madinatul Munawwara to Egypt and is placed inside the river Nile. And when it is placed inside the river Nile, such was the impact that the river Nile began to flow. My friends, 1400 years have passed. From that day to this day, the river Nile has never dried. Umar is that companion of Rasulullah who had such awe, my friend, that even Caesar, when the name of Umar would be mentioned, would begin to see nightmares. Even Khors of Persia, when the name of Umar would be mentioned in his gathering, he would see nightmares. The earth would move in the direction that Umar would walk. Such was the awe and robe he had, my friends, that even the shaitan was afraid of him. And who says this? None other than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Addressing Umar, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, O Umar, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِهِ مَا لَقِيَكَ الشَّيْطَانُ سَالِكًا فَجًّا إِلَّا سَلَكَ فَجًّا غَيْرَ فَجِّكَ. O Umar, I swear by the one in whose hands my life is in. The shaitan does not see you walking down some alleyway, except that the shaitan hides, runs, he changes direction, he begins to go down a different street. Umar is that companion of Rasulullah whose opinions became religious institutions and continue to do so to this very day. 20 of the opinions of Umar received the sanction of revelation. Whatever Umar would say on the dunya, Allah would reveal the same verse of the Quran. In the early days of Islam, when parda was not compulsory upon the believing women, the wives of Rasulullah did not observe the hijab, just like the believing women. Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala, he comes to our beloved Prophet and he requests and says, Ya Rasulullah, it would be a good thing if you ordered the azwaj mutahharat to observe the hijab, because I have noticed all types of people come to your gathering. Good people come to your gathering, bad people come to your gathering. So it would be a good thing if you ordered the azwaj mutahharat to observe the hijab. This was the desire and the wish of Umar. Allahu Akbar, from the heavens, Allah reveals exactly the same verse, and the opinion of Umar receives the sanction of revelation. And Allah orders Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya ayyuhan nabi, kulli azwajika wa banatika wa nisa'il mu'minin yudnina alayhinna min jalabibihin. O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tell your wives, tell your daughters, tell the believing women to draw veils over their bodies. My friends, in the early days of Islam, when Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, the leader of the hypocrites, when he died, out of mere mercy, because Rasulullah وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ was a mercy to mankind. Even to his enemies he was a mercy. So when Abdullah bin Ubay ibn Salul died, out of mercy and kindness, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam desired to offer his janazah. Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu objected. The opinion of Umar received the sanction of revelation, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَلَا تُصَلِّ عَلَىٰ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ مَاتَ أَبَدٌ وَلَا تَقُمْ عَلَىٰ قَبْرِهِ. He never offered the janazah of any one of these people. Another occasion, a Jew says to Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala, verily that Jibreel, your friend Muhammad, makes a mention of, he's an enemy of ours. Sayyidina Umar responds, verily whoever is an enemy of Allah and his angels, Allah is his enemy. The opinion of Umar received the sanction of revelation, and Allah reveals exact the same verse of the Quran. مَنْ كَانَ عَدُوًّا لِلَّهِ وَمَلَائِكَتِهِ وَرُسُلِهِ وَجِبْرِيلَ وَمِيكَالٍ. On another occasion, he comes to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he requests, and he says, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, O Messenger of Allah, it would be a good thing if you made the place of Ibrahim as a place of prayer. The opinion of Umar received the sanction of revelation, and Allah orders Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Quran, وَاتَّخِذُوا مِن مَقَامِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ مُصَلَّى, make the place of Ibrahim as a place of prayer. 20 such opinions of Umar received the sanction of revelation. Whatever he would say, Allah would order Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to do the same. Such is the status of Umar, that it is a Friday, it is a Jumu'ah, and Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu is delivering a khutbah, he's delivering a sermon, and as he's delivering a sermon, all of a sudden he stops, he pauses, and then he shouts, Ya Sariya al-Jabal, O Sariya, go to the mountains. The congregation is confused. Who is he speaking to? What is he referring to? When he finishes the khutbah, he is questioned with regards to this. He explains to the congregation, as I was delivering the sermon, a thought crossed my mind that our Muslim brothers are being defeated by the polytheists in a battle which is taking place in such a land. So I told them, go towards the mountain and launch an attack. Allah will bless you with victory. The remarkable thing is, my young friends, after a month, the news reaches Umar. And the person comes to him and says, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, we were in a distant land. We were fighting with the kuffar. The kuffar were on the verge of defeating us. And as they were on the verge of defeating us, all of a sudden we heard your voice. And you were saying to us, Ya Sariya al-Jabal, O Sariya, go to the mountains and launch an attack. We acted upon your advice, and Allah blessed us with victory. He is that companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that there is a famine in Madinatul Munawwara. The Musliman, the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala majma'in, and their children are suffering. There hasn't been a rain for a long time. The children are suffering, the men are suffering, the women are suffering, the animals are suffering. They come to Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala. He leaves Madinatul Munawwara and he offers 2 rakat salah. And after having offered 2 rakat salah, he raises his hand and he begs for Allah's mercy, and he says, Allahumma inna nastaghfiruka wa nastasqik. Oh Allah, I beg you, forgive all our sins, forgive our major sins, forgive our minor sins. Oh Allah, we are suffering, our children are suffering, our wives are suffering, our mothers are suffering, our animals are suffering. Shower mercy upon us, send upon us your rain. My friends, he does not move from that place till Allah responds and showers the Ummah with rain. The remarkable thing is, as time passes, one day a Bedouin comes to Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala and he says to the Amir al-Mu'mineen, "O Amir al-Mu'mineen, whilst we were in our village on such a day and such a time, all of a sudden in the heavens we saw a cloud, and from that cloud we heard a voice saying," the voice was saying, "Ataq al-Ghawsu Aba Hafsin." O Umar, Aba Hafs was the title of Umar. The voice was saying, "O Umar, the help of Allah is coming to you." When they looked at this, my friends, they realized this coincided with the exact time when Umar had raised his hands and was asking Allah for help. My friends, from a distant place, people could hear voices from clouds saying, "Oh Umar, the help is coming towards you." This was the status of Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala an. Yet the remarkable thing, my young friends, in the early days of Islam, there was no one that was a bigger enemy of the Quran, that was a bigger enemy of the Muslims, and that was a bigger enemy than Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala an. Nobody could even imagine the likes of Umar would ever say La ilaha illallah. There was not even glimmer of hope. So much so that the likes of Amir would mock, and he would say, with regards to Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala an, he would say, فَلَا يُسْلِمْ الَّذِي رَأَيْتْ حَتَّى يُسْلِمْ حِمَارُ الْخَطَّابِ, that he will not embrace Islam till his father's donkey will embrace Islam. Meaning, just as it is impossible for a donkey to say La ilaha illallah, everyone else may declare La ilaha illallah, but this person, Umar, is such a staunch enemy of Islam that this person will never say La ilaha illallah. But my friends, what did they know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had in store for Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu? What did they know? تُؤْتِي الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتَنْزِعُ الْمُلْكَ مِمَّنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرُ إِنَّكَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. He gives the kingdom to whom he wishes. He takes the kingdom away from whom he wishes. He gives respect to whom he wishes. He disgraces whom he wishes. What did they know? إِنَّكَ لَا تَحْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Nobody has the power to guide anyone. It is the Allah that is the Hadi. Allah is the Mudil. Allah is the one that guides. Allah is the one that misguides. What did they know? That this same Umar was going to become Al-Farooq, was going to become Man farraka bayn al-haqqi wal-batil, that will distinguish between right and wrong, that will distinguish between halal and haram, that will distinguish between Islam and kufr. What did they know? That the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which he would make for Umar, Allahumma izz al-Islam bi Umar ibn Khattab or bi Jahl ibn Hisham. Oh Allah, I beg you, strengthen Islam with the likes of Umar or Abu Jahl ibn Hisham. Whoever is more dear to you was on the verge of being accepted. What did they know? That the dream of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the dream of a prophet is revelation was on the verge of becoming a reality, which every person will witness in the entire globe. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw a dream. People are being presented to him. They are wearing shirts. Some of them, their shirts reach their chest. Some of them slightly below. Some of them even below them this. And then Hazrat Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he's presented to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's wearing a very long shirt. It is touching the ground. He's drawing this. That's how long it is. And the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhu majma'in asked our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, what does this dream mean that you have seen Umar? He hasn't even declared La ilaha illallah, and he's wearing a shirt which is touching the ground. And at that time, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, it means that Islam will become strong and it will spread far and wide to every corner of the globe. Come the 6th year after prophethood, and this dream of Rasulullah becomes a reality which the whole world witnesses. The kuffar are gathered in their gatherings, and they are discussing amongst themselves. They want somebody to kill Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Na'udhu billah. They want somebody to put an end to Islam. They want somebody to put an end to the Quran. Umar is in that gathering. He volunteers his services and says that I will assassinate and I will kill Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. With a sword in his hand, he makes his way to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam's house. Now on the way, he's met by a man called Nu'aym ibn Abdullah. And when Nu'aym ibn Abdullah saw the dark frowns on his face, he said to Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala an, Aina turid ya Umar? O Umar, where are you going? He said, Huridu Muhammad al-Haz al-Sabi. I'm going to put an end to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sayyidina Nu'aym ibn Abdullah said, Afala tarji ila ahli baytik fatuqimu amrahum? You're going to put an end to Muhammad and straighten him? Go home first. Your sister has declared La ilaha illallah. Your brother-in-law has declared La ilaha illallah. Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu anhu can't believe what he's hearing. Where has this sudden change came from? All of a sudden, he changes direction. Now he heads towards his sister's house. They are at home. They are receiving lessons of the Quran from Sayyidina Khabbab radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Both sister and his brother-in-law are receiving the lessons of the Quran. He gets to the door is bolted. As soon as Sayyidina Khabbab hears the sound of Umar, terrified of Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, they hid in some inner room. The door is open. Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu barges inside, and without questioning, he begins to beat his brother-in-law. His sister can't tolerate it. This is her husband. And my friends, he begins to beat his brother-in-law. And when his sister intervenes, he pounces upon his sister and he begins to beat her so much that she's covered in blood from head to toe. At the end of the day, my young friends, this woman was no ordinary woman. This was the sister of the great Umar Farooq. If the same blood that was flowing in the veins of Umar was the same blood that was flowing in the veins of his sister, and on that occasion and at that time, Umar had love for kufr, then his sister had love for Islam, and she turned round to her brother and said, "Oh Umar, you do as you please. You can break every bone in our body. You can strip our skin from our bodies. But we have declared La ilaha illallah. And on La ilaha illallah, we will leave this world." Umar is gobsmacked. He doesn't know what's hit him. Where has this sudden transformation come from? That his own flesh and blood, his own sister is prepared to die for La ilaha illallah. When he saw the blood gushing from his sister's body, he felt ashamed that he's beaten his sister up. All of a sudden his eyes fall upon the Quran. He says, "Let me look at this scripture. Let me look at this Quran. Look at the iman." She turns around and says to her brother, "No, you are najis, you are napak, you are impure. This Quran is sacred. You cannot touch the book of Allah." He leaves and takes a bath, and now he returns, and the reciter begins to recite the verses of the Quran. طه ما أنزلنا عليك القرآن لتشقى إلا تذكرة لمن يخشى تنزيلا ممن خلق الأرض والسماوات العلى الرحمن على الأرش استوى له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وما بينهما وما تحت الثرى. My young friends, this was no ordinary book. This was the miracle of all miracles. This is the words of the Lord of the Arsh and Kursi. This book is that book. When it was recited, when the Jinnat heard the recitation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at Batni Nakhla at the time of Tahajjud, even they declared La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and they began to say, "Inna sami'na Qur'anan ajaba yahdi ila rushdi fa'amanna bih." This was that book that was revealed unto Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It made him Sayyidul Mursaleen, the leader of the prophets, and it took him to the 7 heavens and above, where no human has been ever before. This was that book. Yet the month it was revealed in became the blessed month of Ramadan. Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. The night was revealed in became Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr wa ma adraka ma laylatul qadr. It became the night of power. This book was not going to leave Umar without having an impact on his heart of stone. The reciter keeps on reciting, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arshi istawa lahu ma fi as-samawati wa ma fi al-ard wa ma baynahuma wa ma tahta as-sara wa in tajhar bil qawl fa innahu ya'lamu sirra wa akhfa. Every verse was having an impact on the heart of Umar. His heart of stone was beginning to crack. It was beginning to melt like snow melts under the hot sun. And when the reciter got to the verse of the Quran, Innani ana Allah, la ilaha illa ana fa'budni. O Umar, I am the Lord of the Arsh and Kursi. I am the Creator. I am the Khaliq. I am the Malik. I am the Razik. There is no God worthy of worship. So worship me, Umar. This is when it was too much for him, and his heart melted and cracked, and the words begin to flow from his lips. Take me to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's taken to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Sahaba are there around Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they are afraid because they see Umar in the gathering of Rasulullah with a sword in his hands. My friends, Asadullah, the lion of Allah, Hamza, is also in the gathering, and he says to the companions of Rasulullah, "Let Umar come. If he has come with a good intention, then let it be. But if he has come with an evil intention, then today Hamza will take the sword of Umar and behead him with his own sword." Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Hamza, let him be, let him come." Umar comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam asks, "O Umar, what brings you to my gathering today?" And he responds, "Let me tell you, O Messenger of Allah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu annaka Rasulullah. This is why I have come. I have come to testify there is no God worthy of worship, and I have come to testify that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the Messenger of Allah." So not only does he embrace Islam, so firm. And there are so many lessons here that you and I can learn, especially in this day and age and in these testing times. Not only does he declare La ilaha illallah, so firm on Islam, so firm that Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was known for his valor and courage, He himself relates, ما علمت أحدا من المهاجرين إلا هاجر مختفيا إلا عمر بن الخطاب. He relates, everyone from amongst the muhajirin, when the time came when Allah gave them permission to migrate from Makkah al-Mukarramah to Madinah al-Munawwara, أذن للذين يقاتلون بأنهم ظلموا, as a result of the persecution of the kuffar and the polytheists of Makkah, they were given permission to migrate from Makkah to Medina. He says everyone from amongst the muhajirin, when the time came for them to migrate, they migrated secretly and quietly and without letting anyone know, fearing the calamity that may befall them and the torture and the punishment that they may receive on behalf of the kuffar and the polytheists of Makkah. He says everyone did this except for one man, and that one man was none other than Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu. That when the time came for Umar to migrate from Makkah to Medina to Munawwara, my friends, look at the pressure he may have been under. Such was the character and the strength of the iman of Umar, my friends, that when the time came, he did not sell his iman. He took his sword and with his bow and arrows, he made his way to the house of Allah. And then he came and made tawaf around the house of Allah. And after having made tawaf around the house of Allah, he offered 2 rakats behind Maqam Ibrahim. And after offering 2 rakats behind Maqam Ibrahim, the kuffar was sitting in their majlises and in their gatherings with their leaders and their chiefs. He went to every gathering, and he addressed them thus. He said to them, whoever wants his children to become orphans, whoever wants his wife to become a widow, and whoever does not mind his mother lamenting him, then Umar is about to migrate to Makkah. Let it not be that you say afterwards that I didn't tell you. Come and meet me outside this valley. I'm waiting for you here. He did this with every gathering and every chief. All alone, not one stood up and took up the challenge of Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Such was the love that he had for Allah and his Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That on one occasion, when Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam was separated from the Azwaj Mutahharat, the mother of the believers, and this false rumor had spread in Medina, that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam has divorced the Azwaj Mutahharat. As soon as Umar heard this, he came rushing to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Why? Because the daughter of Umar, Sayyidina Hafsa radiallahu ta'ala anha, was the wife of Rasulullah. So he came rushing to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and he asked for permission to enter. Now on normal occasions, wherever there was the messenger of Allah with him, you would always find either Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman and Ali. They didn't even need permission to enter the gatherings of Rasulullah. Now this was the first time where Umar is asking for permission, and permission is not being given to him. So this thought crosses his mind. Okay, maybe Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam thinks that Umar has come today to plead on behalf of Hafsa and to make sifarish and intercede on behalf of Hafsa. So he says to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, O Messenger of Allah, I swear by the one who has sent me, I have not come to you to intercede or plead on behalf of Hafsa. O Messenger of Allah, my love for you is such that if you were to just indicate, I would behead Hafsa with my own hands and her head would be at your feet. This was the love that he had for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. More love than his own flesh and blood. When it came to the deen of Allah, there was no distinction between friend and foe. So much so that the great Amr ibn al-As radiallahu ta'ala, the governor of Egypt, he himself relates, he says, after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr, I have never seen anyone that feared Allah more than Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala. And then he relates this incident, explaining, the fear Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala had for Allah. He says, I was in Egypt in my residence one day, and I received the news that the sons of Umar have come as mujahids to Egypt. He says, I asked with regards to their residence, and I was told that they were living in such a place. But he says, prior to this, I had received a letter from Umar. And in that letter, Umar was warning me. He'd warned me, if I ever treated any member of his family in a different way than I treated the general believers, he would punish me and he would dismiss me. So he says, out of the fear of their father, when his sons came to Egypt, I did not go to their house, and nor did I give them any gift whatsoever. And we let it be like this. He says till one day what happened was the Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu's son came knocking on the door with one of his companions saying, implement the law of Allah upon us, we were intoxicated last night. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu says, I sent them away. I told them off and I sent them away. He says, his son said to me, if you don't punish me, I will tell my father on my return. Amr ibn As radiallahu ta'ala says, I knew inside, if he told his father would punish me and he would dismiss me immediately. He says, meanwhile, his other son Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala came, and out of respect for the son of Umar, I told him to come and sit at the front of the gathering. But he refused, saying that these type of things my father doesn't like, and he sat at the back of the gathering. Now in those days, what would happen is anyone that took intoxicants would be beaten, but at the same time his head would be shaven. So he says, Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala requested, he wasn't too bothered about the beating, because that was the law of Allah. But as for the shaving of the head, he requested that it be done not publicly, done privately inside some other room. Ibn al-As radiallahu ta'ala says, I took them in the courtyard and I beat them both. And then Ibn Umar took them inside one of the inner chambers, one of the inner rooms, and shaved their heads. Now the punishments were implemented and carried out. He says, we left it to this, there was no need of telling Umar. Now one day a letter comes from Umar, and this is what the letter read. Sayyidina Umar Farooq wrote, Min Abdullah Amir al-Mu'mineen ila al-Asi ibn al-Asi Ajibtu laka ya ibn al-Asi wa li jur'atik alayya. This is what he wrote. From the servant of Allah, Umar, commander of the faithful, ila al-Asi, to the disobedient one. Ibn al-Asi, the son of a disobedient one. And he said to Amr ibn al-As, I am so surprised at you. How you went against my instruction, in spite of the fact that I made you the governor of Egypt, and I gave you preference of those that participated in Badr because of what I seen inside you. But you did what you did. You gave preference my son by punishing him in the courtyard and not treating him like you would treat the general believers. When this letter of mine reaches you, you are dismissed from your position. Send my son in a gown on a camel so he realizes the evil of his deed. Now when Sayyidina Amr al-As radiallahu ta'ala received this letter, he wrote back, swearing by Allah that I did not treat your son differently. There are many people who I have punished in the courtyard, Muslims, non-Muslim alike. And he says, I did as his father requested, in a gown, on a camel. I sent him immediately to Madinatul Munawwarah. Now, in spite of the fact that the punishment of Allah had already been implemented and he'd been punished, but such was the personality of Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala, on such high standards that he'd set for himself and for his family, that when his son got to Madinatul Munawwarah, he began to beat him. Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiallahu ta'ala from the Ashari Mubashara began to Islam. Umar, let him be. The punishment of Allah has been implemented. But Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala kept on beating him, kept on reproaching him. The child began to say, oh, Abba, you're going to end up killing me. He kept on hitting him. My friends, the narrations go as far as saying, the child fell ill as a result. And after a few days, the child expired. The child died. This was Umar when it came to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No distinction between friend and foe. He became the greatest leader mankind. Greatest leader mankind. Here, they've made an appeal and we're struggling to actually volunteer. They're not even asking you for your money. All they're asking is, to volunteer and to see if you can collect £2,000. And here you have Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu becomes the greatest leader mankind has ever seen. The superpowers of the time were Persia and the Rome. You can equate that in this day and age with America and China. He conquered both superpowers. He conquered Armenia, Iraq, Iran, Azerbaijan, Tabaristan, Khurasan, and the list continues. 2.25 million square miles of land Umar conquered in 10 years with stability. The miracle is the stability, that he conquered millions and millions of miles of land, and whichever land he conquered, there was stability. And the reason there was stability, because of the justice of Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And the way he took care of those that declared La ilaha illallah. Do you know how difficult it is for a qawm to leave the deen of their forefathers and then just accept this new madhab and then not to revolt and renegade? Country after country he's conquering. He's in Madinatul Munawwarah in the Masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And sometimes you have the treasures of Nahawan, they are thrown at his feet. Sometimes it's the treasures of Nakhir Jan, rubies, diamonds worth millions. Sometimes they are presenting him, Allahu Akbar, with the swords of the monarchs of China. Sometimes it's the robes of Anushirwan that are presented to the great Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala an. You know, on one occasion, they brought him a horse of solid gold this horse was. And this horse had a silver saddle. And on the breast and chest of this horse, inside there were, ruby, it was decorated with rubies and diamonds and emeralds. And on one occasion, they brought him a she-camel of silver. Solid she-camel of silver. The saddle was of gold. The string of this she-camel was studded with priceless rubies. And there was a rider on this she-camel. From head to toe, this rider was decorated in gems, in diamonds, in emeralds, in rubies. Magnificent of all that was presented to Umar when he conquered Persia was a piece of carpet which the Persians used to call the spring. A very large piece of carpet with embroidery of trees and flowers and houses and everything that was embroidered there. It was done with golden, it was worked with golden embroidery, and the fruits and everything were decorated with diamonds and rubies. Treasures after treasures from all corners of the world is there being presented to Umar. I would not be wrong in saying that the keys to the treasures of the dunya were at the feet of Umar. And in spite of all this, this was the personality of Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala that Qatada relates. He relates, on one occasion, he's late for Jummah. People are waiting in the congregation. The congregations in the masjid waiting for the Amir al-Mu'mineen to lead the Jummah prayer. And it's time and the Amir al-Mu'mineen is not there. The Sahaba become anxious. Now all of a sudden rushing, the Amir al-Mu'mineen comes forward to the minbar and he apologizes. And what he says to the companions of Rasulullah and the believers, he apologizes and says, okay, my brothers, I'm sorry that I was delayed. The reason I was delayed is because I had washed my clothes. Listen very carefully to this. This is the Amir al-Mu'mineen. Kisra, when his name would mention, would see nightmares, terrified. These were the superpowers. And he's there washing his own clothes. And he says, I was waiting for this pair of clothes to dry. I had no clothes other than this. This is the Amir al-Mu'mineen. The Amir al-Mu'mineen. On one occasion, Zayd ibn Wahab says, I saw him in the market. And I looked at the garment that he was wearing, and he counted the patches on his garment. My young friends, he had 14 patches. 14 patches. This is the Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now Quds is conquered. Can you imagine Jerusalem being conquered? Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-haram ila al-masjid al-aqsa. May Allah restore it once again in the hands of the believers. Now Quds is now conquered, and this place, even in those days, at all times, it's always been a place of significance, a place of great importance. Yeah? And now the whole world is waiting to see how Umar will leave Madinatul Munawwara and receive Baytul Maqdis. The whole world was waiting to witness the march of Umar the Great from Madinatul Munawwara to Jerusalem. March which was calculated to awe the enemy of Islam with an idea of its grandeur and might. All the enemies of Islam, everyone was waiting for, pomp and splendor, and they were waiting for, musicians and dancers. You've seen generals, when they march and, into significant places which they conquer, how they enter in their thousands. This was the Amir al-Mu'mineen going to receive the keys to Jerusalem. He leaves Madinatul Munawwara. Never mind, my friends, there was no band, no musician, no dancer, nothing. Balke, if you look at the narrations, you will find not even a tent was provided for the accommodation of the Amir al-Mu'mineen. Not even a tent. You're talking about temperatures of 50 degrees centigrade. 50 degrees centigrade. A tent is not a luxury item. It's a necessity to survive in temperatures like this. And the narration goes as far as saying, not even a tent was provided. His head was burning. Why? Because it was exposed to burning heat. He didn't even have a hat or a turban to cover his head. One narration says he came on a camel. Another narration says he came on a horse. The hooves of the horse which he was riding on had worn to tenderness so much so that even the animal was limping. The animal could barely walk. And his body is covered with a shabby attire, torn in many places. And in this condition, he's going to receive the keys to Jerusalem. Now, when he gets close to Jerusalem, the Muslim generals Abu Ubaidah radiallahu ta'ala majma'in and all the Sahaba came to receive Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala. So much so that when they saw the Amir al-Mu'mineen in this condition, even they felt ashamed. And what they did was immediately brought him a horse of Turkish breed and bought him beautiful white clothes. Allahu Akbar, the Amir al-Mu'mineen did not even look at them. And he kept on walking. He kept on walking. When they got to the river, he came off his horse. He had leather socks on, khuf. He took them off, and the Amir al-Mu'mineen is placing them on his own shoulder. He doesn't give them to anyone. He's placing them on his own shoulder. He takes the rein of the horse with himself, by himself. You know, when Sayyidina Abu Ubaidah radiallahu ta'ala sees this and says, thinking in his mind that if the kuffar and the Christians were to see the Amir al-Mu'mineen in this condition, what would they think about the Muslims? So fearing that this would bring shame to the Muslims, he said to the Amir al-Mu'mineen, "Ki Umar, you are behaving in this manner." Now my friends, listen to the response of Umar. This response of Umar is worthy that it's been written on gold on the heart of every believer. Never forget who you are. This was his response. He said to Sayyidina Abu Ubaidah, "Oh Abu Ubaidah, had somebody else said this to me, today he would have known about it. Today he would have known about it because I would have punished him. But you, Ubaidah, know." And he said to him, "Inna kunna azalla qawmin fa'azzana Allah bil Islam famahma natlabu al-izz bighayri ma azzana Allah bi adallana Allah." He said, Inna kunna azalla qawmin. We were the worst of mankind. We were the worst of mankind. We were such people that we would take our own daughters and bury them alive. Allah blessed us through Islam. There is no blessing bigger than Islam. فَعَزَّنَ اللَّهُ بِالْإِسْلَامِ. And then he said, for all of us that get influenced by other cultures so quick and are very quick to, to brush Islam to one side and adopt and accept other ways, he said, فَمَحْمَ نَطْلَبُ الْعِزْ بِغَيْرِ مَا عَزَّنَ اللَّهُ. Whenever we look for respect in things other than the thing through which Allah gave us respect. Which thing did Allah give us respect? Through which thing did Allah give us respect? Allah gave us respect through Islam. So whenever we look for respect in anything other than Islam, this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will disgrace us. Whenever we think that what we've got is a load of rubbish, forgive my language, what we've got is inferior, this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will disgrace us, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing at this moment. There was a time when he did not even receive, he was the Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he did not even receive a salary from the Baytul Mal. And he left it like this. He didn't even tell anyone till the point came that even the Amir al-Mu'mineen was on the point of starvation. And now he asked for a salary himself. And when the Sahaba began to look into his matter, they themselves realized that what he's receiving is nothing. So they themselves suggested that there should be an increase in the salary of the Amir al-Mu'mineen. Not only did they request it, they said, he should be given more clothes, different clothes to wear. And at the same time, a large vessel containing food should be placed before the Amir al-Mu'mineen, so the Sahaba and the great Muslims can also sit and eat with the Amir al-Mu'mineen. But the thing was now, who dare approach Umar with this request? Who dare approach Umar with this request? The Sahaba didn't have the himmah. This was all that Umar had. This was his position. So what they did was they approached the Azwaji Mutahharat, the mother of the believers, Hafsa, Aisha. Okay, let's go to them. He will never say anything to them. And at the same time, they told the Sahaba told Aisha and Hazrat Hafsa radiallahu ta'ala, okay, make sure you don't tell it was us. Now the mothers of the believers approached Umar and they put this request forward which the Sahaba had made. When Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala listened to their request, this is what the hadith says. فَبَكَى عُمَرْ عِنْدَ ذَلِكَ بُكَاءً شَدِيدًا. Tears began to flow from Hazrat Umar's eyes. He couldn't stop crying. And he turned around to Aisha and Hafsa radiallahu ta'ala and he said, سَأَلْتُكَ بِاللَّهِ. I ask you for the sake of Allah and in the name of Allah. هل تعلمين أن رسول الله شبع من خبز بر 10 أيام أو 5 أو 3 أو جمع بين عشاء وغداء حتى لحق بالله. Tell me, wa Aisha Hafsa, did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ever eat bread made out of wheat for 10 consecutive days, for 5 consecutive days, or for 3 consecutive days, or did he ever eat 2 meals in one day? Did Rasulullah ever eat 2 meals in one day? And they turned around and said to Umar, by Allah, he never did this. Then he asked him, هل قرب إليه طعام على مائدة في ارتفاع شبر من الأرض? Was he ever served food on a table which happened to be more than a span high? Again they turned around and said to Umar, by Allah, he was never served food on a table which happened to be more than a span high. He said, أنتما زوجتا رسول الله وأمهات المؤمنين ولكما على المؤمنين حق وعلي خاصة ولكن أتيتما ترغبان في الدنيا وإني لأعلم أن رسول الله لبس جبة من السوف فربما حك جلد من خشونتها تعلمان ذلك. He said, you are the wives of Rasulullah and you are the mothers of the believers. And you have right upon the believers and you have right upon Umar. But today, O Hafsa or Aisha, you have come to Umar, attracting Umar towards the dunya. When I swear by Allah, and I know the Rasulullah would wear a garment of coarse material, and as a result of its thickness, it would itch the blessed body of Rasulullah. Do you also know this? He turned around and said, O Hafsa wa Aisha, هل تعلمين أن رسول الله كان يرقد على أباءة على طاقة واحدة? Do you know he would sleep on his robe which only had one fold? Oh Aisha, you yourself have told me there was a piece of sack inside your house. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would sit on it during the day and he would use it as his bedding during the night. And we the Sahaba would enter in the morning and we would see the marks that it would leave on the blessed body of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hafsa, you yourself told me once that you spread a soft bedding for him, as a result of which he did not wake up for his tahajjud. And he turned around and said to you, O Hafsa, mali wa dunya, what am I going to do with this dunya? O Hafsa, do you not know أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان مغفورا له ما تقدم من ذنبه وما تأخر أمسى جائعا وركض ساجدا ولم يزل راكعا وساجدا وباكيا ومتضرعا في آناء الليل والنهار إلى أن قبض الله برحمته ورضوانه لا أكل عمر طيبا ولا لبس لينا فلو أسوة بصاحبه. O Hafsa, do you not know that Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم was free from sin? And in spite of this, the day he would spend in starvation and the night he would spend in prostration. And this is how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam remained till he left this world. And he said, لا أكل عمر طيبا ولا لبس لينا فلو أسوة بصاحبه. Umar will never eat good food. He will never wear good clothes. He already has 2 beautiful examples before him. The example of Rasulullah and the example of Abu Bakr before him. And this is what he will follow. And that's how he remained till he died. And in spite of the fact, my young friends, this is how he lived. You know, the remarkable thing is, after this, you know, when him and his friend Sayyidina Abu Darda, and they were very close and near to each other, you know, when they would meet up and they would sit and they would remind themselves of the hadith of Rasulullah, لِيَكُنْ بَلَاهُ أَحَدِكُمْ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا كَزَادِ الرَّاكِبِ, that one of you should only have as much as a traveler has with him in this dunya. This is as far as it goes. You know, when they would remind themselves of this hadith, tears would begin to flow from the eyes of Abu Darda. And Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala, in spite of the fact that this is how he lived, that they would begin to say, Maza fa'alna, Maza fa'alna. Look at what we've accumulated, look what we have communicated. You know, to blend this talk in with today's theme. You know, it wasn't food and drink that concerned Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala. You know, what concerned Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala was none other than the condition of the believers. I mean, just one narration comes to mind. On one occasion, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala saw Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala running. And he asked, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, why are you running today? So Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala responded, the reason I'm running is because one of the camels of the public treasury has run away. And I'm going to catch it, I'm going to find it. Sayyidina Ali said to Umar, you have tired the leaders that are going to come after you. Meaning you have set such high standards that whoever becomes the Khalif or the Amir, they will never be able to compete with you or follow your example. It's too high. And he turned around, listen very carefully, my friends, he turned around and said to Sayyidina Umar, لا تلومني يا أبا الحسن. Abu al-Hasan was the kunyat and the title of Sayyidina Ali. He said, لا تلومني يا أبا الحسن. Oh Abu al-Hasan, don't blame me. Why? I swear by the one that I sent Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with prophethood, if so much as a lamb was to fall inside the river, Umar will be responsible for it on the day of judgment. You know, if this was the concern Umar had for an animal, for a lamb, that he felt that if a lamb was to die in the river, wander off on its own accord, fall inside the river and die, Umar would be responsible for it on the day of judgment. What do you think his concern was for the general believers? Narration after narration. If you open the historical books, my friends, we don't have time, and I want to conclude. You know, I'll be honest with you, I didn't even really want to do this talk, because I don't see why. This is not the objective. Well, because they've advertised. And you know why they advertise? Why they advertise my name is because they feel nobody will turn up if we say, you know, if we were to just put down the charity's name. You know how sad it is. Where's our level of our iman? That millions and millions and millions of our brothers are suffering, are dying, and we need to use these tactics just to gather the believers. You know the halat, my friends. Look, Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala, if you open these narrations, every day he wouldn't sleep during the nights. In case some believer is suffering somewhere, he would patrol the streets himself. On one occasion, Awza'i relates that Talha happened to see that he's gone into one house, then a second house, and a third house. So next morning he wanted to see why Umar is going to these houses. Is he up to something no good? He went into one of the houses, and you know what he saw? He saw a blind disabled woman. And he asked this blind disabled woman, why did that man come to you last night? She responded, never mind last night, this man has been coming to my house for years. He is the one that looks after me. He is the one that provides me with my needs. He is the one that takes care of me and takes the filth outside my house. Another narration, Zayd ibn Aslam. He says, we were with the Amir al-Mu'mineen making our rounds. We happened to get to a place called Sarar, just outside Madinatul Munawwara, the outskirts of Medina. And there he saw a woman. There were some children sitting around her, and they were suffering. And they were crying. And this woman had the fire. There was a pot on the fire, and she was cooking. So Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala asked her, why are these children of yours crying? She turned around to Amir al-Mu'mineen, not knowing that this was the Amir. She turned and said, look, my children are suffering from starvation. They haven't eaten. And I'm pretending to cook. There's nothing inside this pot but water. No, there's nothing inside this pot but water. You know, my friends, this narration that I'm relating to is good 1300 years. Yeah. You know, people like me couldn't imagine things like this must be happening in the world. There are thousands of our mothers that are doing this, that are pretending to cook just so that their children can sleep. So, and then the woman said to Sayyidina Umar that there's only water inside this, and Allah will judge between me and Umar on the day of judgment. So Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala said to my sister, how could Umar know that you're suffering like this? She turned around and said, okay, he's taken the responsibility of being the Amir, and can't he keep himself acquainted with the affairs of the people? Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu began to shiver. Immediately he went back to Madinatul Munawwara himself with his servant Aslam, went to the Baytul Mal, took out the ghee, the dates, the meat, and told Aslam to load them on his back. Aslam said, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, I'm sufficient, I'll carry them for you. Look what he said to Aslam. He said, O Aslam, you'll carry them for me now. Will you carry my load and my burden on the day of judgment? As the Umar carried the load himself, and then he came and he gave it to this woman. And not only did he give, he sat there. Whilst this woman was cooking, as the Umar was taking care of the children and helping. As the Umar only left when these children had eaten and there was a smile on their face. And when as Umar was on the verge of leaving, this woman said to him, you know what? You are more fit to be the Amir al-Mu'mineen than Umar Farooq. So he consoled her and said, my sister, when you come to the Amir al-Mu'mineen, you will see me there. My plea to you, my young friends, is, by the grace of Allah, I've had the opportunity to actually see this firsthand. This work this charity work, my friends, believe me, it's not for the weak-hearted. Believe me, it's not for the weak-hearted. These are just pictures which you're seeing here. But you know, and I would advise this for everyone, go and see with your own eyes. And see the way people are suffering. This is why I said it's not for the weak-hearted, because your heart will not, if it's not made out of stone, it's so possible that you might even collapse and die of a heart attack. When you see children clinging onto you, begging for a morsel, and then you think back, what? By the grace of Allah, every morning, look how Allah has blessed me. My children, they have so much to their disposal. They have, whether it's cornflakes, they have biscuits, they have bread. This is just for the breakfast, and never mind the other meals that we eat during the day. And here, you can see people, collapsing and dying because they don't even have a morsel. We are so fortunate. Look, Allah's blessings in the country. What don't we have? What don't we have? We have everything. It's just so sad that we don't have time to actually reflect and look at the blessing of Allah upon us. There's one thing that I want to tell you, which my brothers have not told you before. My friends, تِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ كَمَا تُدِينُ تُدَانُ. Today by the grace of Allah you are well and you have food to eat. And today your sister is dying or committing suicide because she has no milk or food to feed her child. Tomorrow it's so possible that Allah turns the table. Allah turns the table. Just as Allah is testing our brothers there today, what guarantee have we got that Allah won't test us tomorrow? And tell me, my young friend, how would you feel knowing that you have over 1 billion brothers and sisters, yeah? And there is not one that is there to respond to your call. And then you have to watch your own son and daughter die in your own arms. What you've been asked for is nothing. 2,000 pounds is nothing. To raise 2,000 pounds is nothing. That could be done, any person. There's not a single person who will have 5 to 8 friends. And if you just work out simple maths, £5 a week, in a year, £250 each individual, 8 friends, you'll have 2,000 pounds. But can you imagine, Allahu Akbar, we've seen this with our own eyes when we went down. Children, when we give them, I'd say, we took them Eid gifts, a new pair of clothes, some shoes. You should see the smile on the face of these orphans. On the face of these orphans. You should see the smile. Can you imagine the smile that you would bring on these individuals? And I was just sitting there thinking when Maulana was making this announcement with regards to, let's see if we can get 50. How many houses have we got today? 37 houses we've got. We need another 13. Can you imagine on the day of judgment, you're there standing before the Arsh of Kursi, the Lord of the Arsh and Kursi. Do you understand? And this child comes to Allah and says, oh Allah, this person brought a smile to my face. I beg you, bring a smile to his face. And the Lord of the Arsh and Kursi turns around and said, you brought a smile to his face, let me bring a smile to your face. Go forgiven, go into paradise. You do not know, nobody knows which deed of his will benefit him. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm here. I do not know which deed of mine will benefit me in the next life. We can never be content with what we do, indeed, by the grace of Allah. And I thank you for the good that you've already done. It is through the good that you do that people like this are able to then pass on your good to these people. And these people that you do good to are grateful for the good that you do. And I know it's too much to ask, but what can we do when we see our brothers and sisters dying on a daily basis? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam could not tolerate the suffering of any human being. This is why Allah says in this verse of the Quran, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ. What would trouble Rasulullah is this, that he'd see any Muslim suffering. This is why if you open the narrations, you will find You will find, the brother was saying that some of us don't have anything. Yeah? Look at Rasulullah. Never once did he ever turn a beggar away. Never once did he ever turn a beggar away. And when he would not have anything, he would say to the person, go wherever you like, take a loan, buy whatever you like, and tell that person, Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has taken the responsibility of repaying that loan. And sometimes the hadith comes to mind. When he would see that there's no one there with anything. The hadith that comes to mind is the hadith of Muslim, narrated by Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Okay, one occasion a man came to him, and the man said, Inni majhood. The word juhud means to be in extreme difficulty. And said, okay, Ya Rasulullah, I haven't eaten for days now, such has become of me that I can't tolerate it, it's too much. That's why I've come to you. Why? وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. You are the mercy for mankind, and I've come to you for help. So Rasulullah immediately had nothing there with him. He sent a wife to the Azwaj Mutahharat. Aisha, whatever you have inside your house, send. Now, as Aisha sent a message to Ya Rasulullah, فَوَالَّذِي بَعَثَ بِالْحَقِّ مَا إِنْدِ إِلَّا مَا. I swear by the one that has sent you with the truth, there is nothing inside my house other than water. Rasulullah sent a message to the other Azwaj Mutahharat. One by one, every one of them respond, I swear by the one that has sent you with truth, O Messenger of Allah, we want to help, but there is nothing inside our own houses other than water. So the Azwaj Mutahharat themselves were suffering from starvation. They had nothing inside their house. But still, if they had, they were prepared to give. Now what does Rasulullah do? Because this person is in his gathering and he's suffering. And this is something, Rasulullah can't tolerate. So now, as we're doing today with you, he stood up and asked the Sahaba, Man yudhifu hadha layla? Who will take this person and entertain him as a guest tonight? When the Ansari saw the cry of Rasulullah without thinking, no mashura with anyone, without thinking, he stood up. فَقَامَ رَجُلٌ مِنَ الْأَنصَارِ أَنَا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. And Ansari stood up and said, Ya Rasulullah, don't worry, I will take him home and I will entertain him as a guest. Now he went home without even asking his wife. And when he got home and told his wife today that the guest of Rasulullah will be dining with us, he turned around and asked his wife, هَلْ إِنْدَكِ شَيْءٌ? Is there anything inside the house that you can give him to eat? Look what his wife says. La. There is nothing in our house except إِلَّا قُوتُ سِبْيَانِ, except a little which will just suffice our own flesh and blood. Now listen to this, my friends. What he said, look at the advice that gives his wife. He says to her, فَعَلِّلِيهِمْ بِشَيْءٍ. Give our children something to suck on. فَإِذَا أَرَادُوا الْأَشَاءَ فَنَوِّمِيهِمْ. When in the evening when our children ask for their evening meal and children cry and ask for their meal, what to do is lull them to sleep. And when our guest enters, what to do is put out the lamp. We will sit with our guests, give them our children's food, and he will be able to see because there'll be no light, and we'll pretend and we'll sit there as if we are also eating with him. Now my friends, look what he's saying to his wife. This is a mother. Yeah? A mother, my friend, can tolerate anything, but a mother cannot tolerate the suffering of her own flesh and blood. This is natural love that Allah's placed inside, the heart of a mother, that she's prepared to give her life to save her own flesh and blood. And when her husband is giving her this advice, that your own flesh and blood, lull them to sleep, give them nothing to eat, and give it to this poor man that has come to the gathering of Rasulullah, Sami'na wa ata'na was the response. I have heard and I will obey. And that's exactly what she did. In the children, give them something to chew on, a seed or something. And in the evening when her own flesh and blood were crying for food, she picked them up, placed a stone in her heart, and she lulled them to sleep. And then when this guest entered, she did as her husband said, took off the lamp. And this person sat down and ate the meal of their children, not even realizing that the husband and wife are sitting there and they are not eating anything. It was dark, he couldn't see. But he that watches everything, the Lord of the Arsh and Kursi, was watching again. And next morning, when this companion goes to the gathering of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to him, قَدْ عَجِبَ اللَّهُ مِنْ سَنِيئِكُمَا بِضَيْفِكُمَا. That even Allah appreciated your entertainment of the guest last night. And to the day of judgment, we recite the verse of the Quran which was revealed. وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. Such were these Muslims when they saw their Muslim brothers suffering. They would give preference over their own self, their wives and their children, even though they were suffering themselves. Poverty may be their lot. Can you imagine how, the very same messenger who could not even tolerate the suffering of one believer, if Rasulullah was alive here today amongst us, and he was to see what is happening across the globe, from Gaza, where you have over 1 million Muslims living in the greatest and biggest open prison that has been throughout history, where nothing goes in, nothing go out. Them people in Gaza just literally wait for death. They do not know when the angel will come. They do not know when the next morsel will come. How do you think Rasulullah would feel if he were to see his ummatis like this? Then at the same time, when he sees these are ummatis on one side, and then they have millions and millions of their brothers like you and me, who Allah has blessed. How do you think Rasulullah would feel? And on this note, I will conclude. Hopefully, inshallah, Maulana is going to make a few more points with regards to it. It'll be really good. We've only managed to get 37 houses. Alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah. Even that's good. But it would be better if we got 50, because they've asked me that in these next 3 weeks, we need to provide accommodation for at least 150 families. So it would be good if we can make up the number. But if not, alhamdulillah, even on this, all praise to Allah. So my friends, you want to bear this in mind, how Rasulullah would feel. On one hand, where our brothers are suffering like this, and our daughters and our mothers are committing suicide because they have nothing. And then on the other side, people like yourselves and me who can do more. We all can do more, every one of us. And next time, your child throws away that morsel out in your house. Every day when our wives wrap up the dastarkhan, how many chapatis are left over, how much rice is left over, and it all goes into the bin. I just want you to think at that time, when you throw that into bin, you know what? There was an orphan that died because he couldn't receive that. I just want you to think of that. When your wife throws that extra food that was left over into the bin, right? See how you feel, reminding yourself, there was an orphan out there. Had you cooked less and given that to that child, maybe today he would have been amongst us and part of the ummah of Rasulullah. And on this note, I conclude. May Allah give me the tawfiq, Allah give you the tawfiq for the good that you've done. Akhiru dawana alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.